So are the big brakes on the Q50 even worth it? Do they even do anything like improve stopping distance, or do they have better stopping power than the baby brakes? This can often become a really heated conversation among people within the group. It's a major point of contention, to the point where people love to trim shame, right? Those sport Q50 guys love to say to all the rest of us that, oh, you must be poor, or you don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. It's so nonsense. I want to clear the air here today, and I want to kind of dive into this topic of conversation because I think a source of a lot of this infighting amongst us is both ignorance, and ignorance might be a little bit of an aggressive word, but it truly comes down to the fact that people just don't know, or they don't know what they're talking about. The other thing is, I think, semantics. It comes down to sort of a miscommunication between the two people arguing. They might be talking about the same thing, but they're using different language, so it sort of gets mixed up, right? Some people are talking about stopping distance, and some people are talking about stopping power, and some folks don't know the difference between the two, so they just dive into the argument and they just kind of rattle off a bunch of things, and they don't really know what they're talking about. Again, that's that ignorance piece, right? I hope by the end of this we can all come to sort of a shared understanding and be able to talk about this reasonably and rationally with each other, because we need to talk. We just really need to get into some real information here. So anyway, I appreciate you guys stopping in. If you're new to the channel, I appreciate you stopping in as well. Hit the subscribe button if you don't mind, and the little bell notification as well. I do 3 videos every single week: Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And I never miss. Okay, I miss sometimes, but I try not to miss that often. And I'm sure out of the 550 something videos I have uploaded at this point, you'll find something of interest. Every modification has been documented, installed, tested, reviewed. It's all there. If you have any questions, I'm sure you'll find them in these videos. So I appreciate you guys following along. Again, this is a major topic of conversation, and a lot of the fighting comes from just ignorance. People think, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh my God, the big brakes really saved my ass. I would have been in so many accidents if I had the baby brakes. The reality is, no, you wouldn't have. Because there is zero difference, literally zero difference in stopping distance comparing the non-sport baby brakes to the Akebono big brakes. And again, I said stopping distance.
The main advantage of upgrading your brakes is not a shorter stopping distance. The main advantage is resisting brake fade.
Stopping distance is what it is. It is the amount of distance that it takes for a car to go from a given mile per hour to 0. In that length of time, when the brakes are applied, how long does it take that car to come to a complete stop? Stopping distance. Again, this is a major source of the contention. Now, I can talk a little bit about my personal experiences as far as this goes, but Donut Media a while back did a great test for 350Z. They did sort of a smaller braking, less expensive braking setup on one car, and then they did a really, really expensive Willwood setup on another. And they tested this over and over again, testing stopping distance between the cars. And what they found was that there is very little, if any, difference in stopping distance at all between the two.
With our 60-0 test, we were able to shave off about 5 feet from the stock brakes, which only goes to show that upgrading your brakes doesn't really make you stop sooner.
I found this out personally myself, going from the baby brakes, testing it out on Tail of the Dragon, making a sort of an intermediate upgrade with drilled and slotted rotors and more aggressive pads, and then upgraded again to another step up with even more aggressive pads and stainless steel braided brake lines and upgraded fluid, and then ultimately to the big brakes. And what I found was that in regular everyday driving, there is zero difference. Zero difference in brake feel, zero difference in stopping distance, zero difference in like brake force, like, you know, hitting the brakes and how quickly you're going to feel the brakes sort of lock up on the car. No difference whatsoever. Where the big brakes do have an advantage, however, is resistance to brake fade. And that is, brake fade becomes an issue after prolonged aggressive use of the braking system. Track day, Tail of the Dragon, mountain run, you know, consistent, repetitive, strenuous braking. That's when the big brakes really start to shine. And this is what Donut Media found as well in their test. Again, very, very little difference in stopping distance over even a number of runs, over and over, repetitive runs. Like I said, in regular, everyday, normal driving, you will never notice a difference between the sport brakes and the baby brakes. I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to get their feelings hurt hearing this, and they're going to fight me in the comments saying, oh, I know for sure, I can totally feel the difference, I could totally feel the difference. You know, it's just like adding some simple mods to your car and feeling it in the butt dyno. If you tested it, truly, there won't be a difference, or that difference would be so negligible, it wouldn't even be worth mentioning. So I think it's the language that we use, it's the semantics, right, that get us sort of bickering back and forth between each other. There's a big difference between stopping distance and stopping power. We know that there's no difference in stopping distance because of the tests, my personal experience. You know, somebody once said that you can't kill something more than dead. Dead is dead. And that's the same for these braking systems. You're going to lock up the tires with the non-sport brakes, and you're going to lock up the tires with the sport brakes. You can't lock them up more than being locked up. So it's going to come down to a bunch of other conditions, you know, road conditions, weather conditions, tires that you have, the weight of the vehicle at the time. A lot of things play into stopping distance. The braking system itself isn't going to have all that big of an impact because you're going to lock up the wheels with both of them. But braking power, stopping power, that is a combination of a number of things, including stopping distance, but resistance to brake fade, longevity of the system, how the system reacts to various driving conditions or driving scenarios. There's a lot that goes into stopping power, and that's where the big brakes have the advantage. Although they might not stop the car faster in a straight line from 60 to 0, you know, over just a short testing period, they're going to resist that brake fade over a period of time. It's when you're, you know, when your braking system is seeing repetitive, aggressive, heavy braking over a long period of time, that's where you're going to start to shine. At the end of the day, the end of the track day, on that last lap, those big brakes are going to still perform to a higher level than those baby brakes will. And that's what I experienced personally at Tail of the Dragon. With the baby brakes, even with the drilled and slotted rotors, I was able to do multiple passes, 3 passes back to back on Tail of the Dragon, and they really did well. But it was on that 4th trip down that I was starting to experience brake fade. You know, the fluid was getting hot, the pads and the rotors were getting hot, but once upgraded to the big brakes, they were able to resist that brake fade a little bit better. The impact wasn't so great. The larger braking, that rotor surface was able to dissipate the heat a little bit better. That's where the benefit of the big brakes comes in. It's that repetitive, strenuous, aggressive braking over a long period of time. So I'm sorry to hurt the feelings of all those people that have said, oh, I would have been in so many car accidents, or the sport brakes stopped me so much better than the non-sport brakes. I mean, guys, I know for certain if you were to actually test this out, you would see the truth. And it's been done. The testing has been done. I'm sure there's multiple videos, there's multiple articles out there that you can read that would show this to be true, that stopping distance, the difference between the Akebono big brakes and the baby brakes is going to be negligible, if anything at all. But stopping power is where the big brakes are going to really shine through. Resistance to brake fade and just sort of, you know, being consistent over a long period of time of heavy braking. That's where the big brakes are going to benefit you the most. Not in regular driving, everyday traffic. Just, it's not going to make a difference at all. And this is me speaking from personal experience. You can trust me, I'm a doctor. The point is that the baby brakes are actually pretty darn good.
They definitely faded, but I don't know. These are worse circumstances you could throw at brakes, and they were pretty damn consistent. So for what we paid, yeah, we can't really be disappointed.
They're pretty darn good, especially if you upgrade the rotors, get a more aggressive pad, stainless steel braided brake lines, and a higher temperature brake fluid. It's going to make a massive difference. But if you plan on doing a bunch of track days, or you like to rip Tail of the Dragon or do a bunch of mountain runs, the big brakes are probably a pretty good upgrade for you. Aside from looking good, obviously, if you're all about aesthetics, the big brakes look a lot better, clearly. You can't deny that. I've heard a lot of people make comments, too, about some of these guys that do the straight line racing, the drag racing with the 3.0Ts in particular that are making 500-plus horsepower. And people are like, wow, you're making all that horsepower and you haven't upgraded the brakes? Well, I mean, what do you need the big brakes for if you're just going in a straight line? You got to slow down at the end of the run. You know, baby brakes are going to do just fine there. It's not like... And in fact, the small brakes are a lot lighter than the big brakes, so it behooves them to stay with the small brakes. Weight reduction and all that. So there's a lot that goes into the conversation about the braking setup and what's best for any given scenario, but just in general, I think we covered a pretty substantial bit of this topic of conversation today. So I appreciate you guys following along. I appreciate the continued support on these videos. Onward and upward for you guys, onward and upward for the channel. 2023 is coming up and I'm pumped. And I hope you guys are too. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.